Hi guys, so today we are learning a new kind of part of our unit that's a big chunk, and that's solving quadratics using different things. So what we just learned was how to factor, so now we're going to learn how to factor while solving a quadratic. So now rather than just factoring, we're going to solve, but like I said, we are going to use factoring to solve. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over today is just some new vocabulary or old vocabulary that we already know. So, for instance, last time we were learning the parts of the parabola, we learned about the x-intercepts. Okay, and if you guys remember, the x-intercepts were the points that cross, or the points at which the graph crossed the x-axis, okay? So in this case, it's going to be the same thing. But here, we have to remember that zeros, roots, and solutions, and x-intercepts all mean the same thing. So that's why I have this little line there to kind of tell you guys that all of these four words mean the same thing, okay? We may use these words interchangeably. Interchangeably means that they can be used, I could use zeros one time and I can use x-intercepts one time. They all mean the same thing, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and write the definition down for these first four words. So I want you to go ahead and copy this down. And this is the points where the function equals 0, okay? Or there's a couple points. Or when y equals 0, okay? And lastly, where we know it, where the, where the graph, crosses the x-axis. So the points at which the graph crosses the x-axis, okay? So that's how we are going to find that. All right, so remember that. We kind of know that. Just a little bit of a reminder there. So really, the big definite part of this definition is when the points cross the x-axis. That's what we want to look for, okay? We find our zeros, roots, solutions, or x-intercepts when that graph crosses at that certain point on the x-axis, okay? And then something else we are learning today. This is new to you guys, okay? We are learning the zero product property. This is also known as the ZPP. So that's important because most of the time we will shorthand it to ZPP, okay? And what this property states is if A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0, B equals 0, or both equal 0. Okay, so that is our first part of this new unit. It's just kind of going over some vocabulary, which we already knew these top four, and the zero product property is new to us, but in a way not really new because we know that when we get an answer of 0, when we're multiplying, one of those numbers has to be 0. That's all that this product property is saying, okay? So in summary here, the zeros of a quadratic formula are the points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Remember, parabola is the new word we're going to use for a quadratic. A quadratic is a U-shaped graph, okay? So today, here I have stated all of the ways that we can solve the quadratic function, okay? But we are only going to look at the first two today, okay? So we are looking at graphing and analyzing graphs, but we're also going to look at the zero product property because they do go hand in hand. Okay, so now we also need to talk about the types of solutions that we can have when we are analyzing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go over that. I'm going to erase this little U shape so I could use that space here. Okay, so here we're going to look at a time, this is my little graph, okay, when we have one solution. All right, I'm going to draw that a little better. Okay, so here we are going to work on a time that has one solution. So we only have one solution because our graph only crosses the x-axis once. Okay, I think we talked about this. If not, it's kind of just a reminder. So this quadratic right here only has one solution. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down here. So this is one solution. So that's one example. Okay. Then we have another example where here, sorry, I'm going to make that a little bigger. Okay, it's ugly. Give me 1 second. here we are looking at our quadratic, and here the parabola crosses the x-axis twice. Okay, so you could see that with the dots there. The parabola crosses this one twice. So here we have a 2 solution. Okay? And then lastly, so these are going to be the 3 solutions that we really are looking at, okay? Lastly, I'm going to go over a parabola shaped as so, placed on the graph as so, okay? Make that a little better. Now here, the parabola does not cross the x-axis, which means this has 0 solutions, okay? Or another word also called no solution. So you can either say 0 solutions or no solution. I would like you to say no solution, so but both you can use, okay? But really, in reality, I really want you to write no solution, okay? You could see what that says. I know my handwriting is a little sloppy today, okay? All right, so now that we have gone over these 3 solutions, those are super easy. You just need to know how many times the parabola crosses the x-axis, and then you can then clarify which solution we're seeing. Okay, so the solution to a quadratic function, so we're here now, okay? I'm going to go over this. So we're going to start going over our first dot. So that's talking about solving quadratic functions by analyzing graphs, okay? So what we are doing here is we are finding those points on that the graph crosses the x-axis while we're looking at the graph, okay? So this first little spot here, we're going to add into this blank, okay? The solution to a quadratic function is the point where the graph, always remember, crosses the x-axis. Okay, so go ahead and fill that blank in. We are always finding the points that cross the x-axis because those are our solutions. All right, so here in this example, we see a quadratic function. We see a parabola, okay? Then the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a point on where the graph crosses the x-axis. So here we see that it crosses the x-axis twice, which means that we have a 2-solution graph, okay, or a 2-solution quadratic. All right, then down here they give you the answer here, okay. What we want to see is that our solutions, we can write these 2 ways. We can write x, or we can write the actual point of the graph, okay. So ignore these solutions right here because that's not right. Okay, I think they were just giving an example. I'm not really sure what's happening there, okay? But we can write the solutions as -3, 0 and 1, 0 because those are the points that our graph crosses that x-axis, okay? So that's important to realize. But what's also important to realize is there's 2 ways that we are able to write our solutions. Okay, there's 2 different ways that we can write our solutions. One is by making it into coordinates, so making it into an ordered pair. And the other one is by just taking your x-axis and saying x equals -3 or x equals 1. Okay, so ignore this. I'm not really sure what's going on, why they put that there. Okay, so that's how we would write our solutions. Okay, so you can write them either way. I do not mind how you write them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look over the next one. Okay, so I am looking at my U-shaped graph. Okay, I'm going to draw it a little so I just know what I'm looking at. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put a red point on the places that my graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, so one point's going to go here because it crosses there, and one point is going to go here. Now remember, if you have a hard time writing an ordered pair, when you are finding a pair on your x-axis, the y is always going to be 0. Always, always, always. Okay, so I'm looking at my first red point on the left, and that's an easy point. I know that that's at 0, 0. So I have that solution, and I also have the other solution on the right side. Now remember what I said, your y is always going to be 0. So I know if my y is 0, that's my second term in my ordered pair, that the other term has to be the number. So here I see a 2, so my points are at 0, 0, and 2, 0. So those are my two solutions to this quadratic while looking at the graph. But remember, I'm also going to write it in the other way. So I'm going to take the x term of each ordered pair, and I'm going to come down here and say x equals 0 and x equals 2. So this is also another way that you can write your solutions. Okay? And then I want you to go ahead and do that last one on your own. Okay, so pause this video and go ahead and do that on your own. That's important to do, so I want to make sure you guys do it. So go ahead and pause. Okay, now that you are back, all right, I'm just going to give you guys the answer to this one. So this is a one solution, okay? So I also want you guys to get used to writing one solution, or in this case, it was two solutions. I want you to get used to writing that. So every time we see something, I want you to write one solution, two solutions, or no solutions based on the parabola, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and plot my point at which the graph crosses the x or touches the x-axis, okay? Now I remember that when I'm looking at an ordered pair, my y is always 0. Here, I know that the graph only crosses the x-axis once, so I can only have one solution, and that point is going to be -1, 0. But remember, we could also take our x coordinate and come down here and write x equals -1. Okay, so that's how you will solve using graphs. So that's super easy. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and, if you guys need some time, you can pause yourself and go over some things, but I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next page, okay? So now what you're going to do is you are going to practice a bunch, okay? I am not going to give you the answers, so I want you to pause this video and then go ahead and do that. Do so, okay? If you'd rather watch the next part of the video, you can do that and then go back and practice. But there is another part, so this lesson is not over. Okay, so go ahead and do problems 1 through 9. That is going to be part of your classwork for the day. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next page, which is another part of the lesson, and this is when we are going to go over the zero product property. Okay, so this is important. We're going to go over the zero product property. And remember, from the first page, the zero product property states that if A times B equals 0, then A is either 0, B is either 0, or both A and B are 0. Okay? So now, to solve using the zero product property, what we do is we always set both of our terms in the parentheses, so our factored parentheses, we're going to set them to 0, and that's how we are going to find our solution. Okay? So, for example, you're going to take each parenthesis and set them to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0, and then x minus 5 equals 0. Okay? And now this is just a one-step equation. This is the simplest thing in the world. Okay? So we just need to get x by itself. In this case, to get x by itself, we need to subtract 1 from both sides. Okay, now these cancel out, and what we have left is x equals -1. Now we have one of our solutions, okay? Then we're going to go ahead and do the next one. So the second one says x minus 5 equals 0, right? So what we're going to do to get x by itself is add 5 to both sides, okay? These cancel out, and what you're left with is x equals 5. These are our solutions, okay? And that's how you complete the zero product property rule. So what you're doing is just setting the factored out little parentheses to 0, and then you're solving. So super easy. I'm going to do the next one with you, and then you guys are going to go ahead and do numbers 1 through 6 on your own. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my first, so I'm setting my first parenthesis to 0, 2x plus 5 equals 0, okay? And then I'm going to set my second one also to 0, 3x minus, I'm actually going to do it this way so I have more room, 3x minus 2 equals 0. And then we're going to go ahead and solve. It is okay here to get a fraction. Okay, I want you to keep it in fraction form. It is okay to get a fraction. You will most likely get fractions a good chunk of the time. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. Subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, now these cancel out. We have 2x equals negative 5. Then in order to get 5, x by itself, we need to divide by 2. So this is a two-step equation, okay? My 2's cancel out, and I have x equals negative 5 over 2. Keep it this way. Do not change it, okay? I want you to keep it that way. Then you're going to follow the same steps on the second parenthesis, okay? So we have 3x minus 2 equals 0. So here we're going to add 2 to both sides, okay? So this cancels out, and we have 3x equals a positive 2. Then in order to get x by itself, we have to then divide. My 3's cancel out, and I am left with x equals 2 over 3. And this is where you're stopping. So here you have two solutions, okay? And it's x equals negative 5 over 2, and x equals 2 over 3. Okay? Now you're going to go ahead and do these on your own. At the end of class, I am going to post these answers. Okay? This is part of your classwork, and it is not a grade. This is up to you. You should be doing this because it could be difficult, and it's going to be on your quiz. Okay? On a test, on a quiz, that's going to be on there. So remember, I give open notes and open quizzes, so if you take good notes, you'll be able to do it easily on the quiz. If you decide that you just don't want to do it, that's kind of on you. Okay? If you have any questions, go ahead and either email me or text me, okay? If you have problems with number 5 because it's a little different, I want you to go ahead and text me, okay? All right, have a good night, guys.